Good morning and good afternoon. Every now and again, there's a time where subscribers and viewers will comment on some of my videos that I've been giving because on Financial Literacy 101, we give financial information, tips on stocks, how to build your savings, how to generate generational wealth. And every now and again, I love to give political commentary and oration about current events and some things that just probably on my mind to have the viewers and other subscribers to think outside the box. But every now and again, there are comments that are left that inspire me and inform me that maybe you should do a video on this to give a different contextualized statement of a response to certain critics. And this is in response to an African critic on one of my videos that I've done. And we're going to cover some of this here this morning and as well as this afternoon. So with that being said, this is coming from OG. And this is what the statements are stating here. He says, you keep mentioning Nigeria and South Africa. Well, I want to respond to majority of the statements that the man here has essentially stated in his comments. First and foremost, the reason why I have said Nigeria and South Africa most likely is not only do they have some of the largest GDPs in Africa, but majority of the students that some of the reports out of the Ukraine and the Western media was stating that is why I'm addressing Nigeria and South Africa, or essentially mentioning them, okay? But we'll get into some of my video so we can do some comparison and correlation so other viewers and subscribers can understand what we're talking about. He also states, fair enough. But like I said, no African goes to Ukraine as an economic migrant. Do your research properly. They are a very tiny number. Africans go to Ukraine for studies, most for medicine and some of engineering, which is absolutely true. But there are thousands of African immigrant students and citizens who become citizens of the European states. They're within the Eurasia continent. So that number is grotesquely false. So there are thousands of African immigrants who have went there for STEM-like and doctors and lawyers and have stayed there because of the conditions of those countries, because they're essentially first world countries. And they have said this throughout the Western media. I'm just giving you statements here. But since you decided to go through this route, U.S. is the biggest economy in the world. However, the quality of life generally in Switzerland, Norway, Germany, etc., are well above that of the U.S. Why? There are so many countries in the world better than U.S. and basic life indices, which is absolutely true. So let's get further involved in what this young man is stating to me and how do I absolutely feel about these things. Now, if he really took the time to do his research properly, he will understand that the entire video was about Pan-Africanism. If you will conjoin the two and understand the underlying thought that I was giving, it was about Pan-Africanism and how that movement has died. Okay, there has been a lot of foundational Black Americans, descendants of American slaves, who have essentially tried to connect the bridge between the Caribbean and the African continent in order for us to be more economically stable and become economically powerful, just as well as the Europeans, just as well as the Asians. But he didn't get that from that video, and I understand. So with that being said, I think I should show some of that video so some of the viewers and some of my new subscribers can understand what this conversation is all about. Good afternoon, everyone. So this afternoon, I wanted to address some notes that I've been receiving, some comments I've been receiving as we are covering the Ukraine and Russian conflict and how that is affecting a lot of the African immigrants there, whether they be from Nigeria, South Africa, and other countries. And I think what's important in this discussion, ladies and gentlemen, that I know a lot of times when we make titles for videos, we speak about these particular issues, they may seem divisive. They may seem as though we're against, Africa of some sort, but of course not. But I do want to bring relevance. I want to bring right there. We need to understand, I said that they may seem divisive and that we are against our African brothers and sisters and cousins from the continent Caribbean, but we are absolutely not. But we are drawing a line in the sand. So when things are occurring to Black Americans in America, we essentially don't have any support from the many countries in Africa, from the many islands in the Caribbean. We don't get any support. But as soon as something occurs in these regions, as soon as something occurs in these countries, they will want our support. When things happen in Haiti, they wanted Black American support. When things were occurring in the different countries in Africa, they will want Black American support. When things were occurring in the Caribbean, they will want Black American support. But anytime something occurs to us, we don't have that same support that you guys are asking us for. So we really need to be very, very transparent, because there's no hate, there is no animosity between myself and I would like to speak for a large population of the foundational Black American community. There's no hate. But time and time again, as we would stretch our necks out to support, we get slapped on the hand and say, no, you are not my brother. You are not my cousin. You guys are totally different people, and we accept that. But in the same token, when things occur worldwide and the most white supremacy countries in the world, then there's support that need to be handed out in support of our African cousins and brothers and sisters. So I say to you, what really is it? You told me that I took a comment from a national born Nigerian, and I somehow exploited that to speak my rhetoric and my bias. That is one of many comics, sir. And I'm responding to you directly, because this is important, because now you are the comment that is being highlighted. So when anytime someone makes a comment from any ethnic background, any cultural background, you're not just speaking for yourself. And you're not speaking for your entire country, but believe it or not, you are speaking for a certain percentage, whether it be large or small, because a lot of us think alike in certain circles, in certain realms, in certain groups. So I digress there. But nonetheless, let's get back into the video. Some sort of context to the conversation and what's essentially going on in Africa, what's going on in Ukraine as well as Russia. But I don't want to focus on the Ukraine-Russian conflict. I want to simply focus on those African immigrants that are essentially trying to flee the Ukrainian border, and the Ukrainian government, as well as some of the citizens, are preventing them to actually leave and go into countries like Poland. Poland is even refusing to accept a lot of the African immigrants, and also countries like Romania and other bordering countries. What I believe that's very important is that we first bring relevance to it, as I said before. And as I'm still preparing here, bear with me, because I don't want to talk out the side of my neck. I want to give you some information here that I think that's going to push the conversation forward, if that makes any sense. Let me just speed this up a little bit. I'm speaking ill about Ukraine as well as Russia, because again, one of the #1 exports to Africa from that region is wheat, which feeds a lot of people. So let's bring up some other things. We're just going to flash you a couple of things. I want you guys to really build with me here. I want you guys to really unpack this the way I looked at it. So as I'm looking at this, I looked up Ukraine's GDP, which is $155 billion. I looked up Nigeria's GDP, $432 billion. And I looked up South Africa's GDP, which is roughly $302 billion. So family, the reason why I even did that video was based upon Pan-Africanism in some sort of way. Early on, a lot of our ancestors, the forefathers, and activists has reached out to the African continent for assistance, help, support, reinforcements, however you want to label it, right? For us can have unity within the African diaspora, but that has failed to take any sort of soul breaking, any sort of soul ties of any sort. It's really a nothing burger. Nothing has happened on those lines. Let's think about this, because I don't want to highlight this young man to the point where he's speaking for majority of African immigrants, especially from Nigeria, where he's from. But I do want to point out some things as we're going through his comments. He was stating that the quality of life generally in Switzerland, Norway, Germany, and other European countries are well above that of the US. And he is absolutely correct. But you know what he didn't say? The quality of living in Africa, in some countries, in some districts in Africa are well above the living standards in America or even those European countries. Because as he states, and I will read, that Europe colonized Africa and stole and plunged and pillaged a bunch of their resources. Absolutely, sir. You're absolutely correct. So with that being said, I kind of inspired me to go and see the quality of living standards in the countries that he named versus the US. So we can kind of get a comparison of the quality of living in those European countries. But again, those are very vague statements because we're going to get just a little bit detail so we can bring context to the conversation. Okay. So with that being said, we're going to do a rough rundown of the countries. So number one, Canada, Denmark, Sweden at number 3. And then we get to his country. Sweden is number 3. Norway is number 4. We are Austria, Netherlands, Finland, and then Germany at number 9. You don't see the US yet. New Zealand, Austria, Belgium, Japan, United Kingdom, Ireland, Singapore, France, South Korea, Spain, and the United States of America is coming in at number 20. So the questions that some of you may have is, where are those African countries? Where is South Africa? Where's Nigeria? Where's Kenya? Where's Ghana? Where's Algeria? Where's the North Arab Emirates of North Africa? Where's the Congo? Where's the Namibia? Where's Zimbabwe? Where's Gambia? Where's Mozambique, Angola, Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda? Where are all these other countries? I know Europe and the Western countries has stole majority of your wealth, and you guys will state over and over again that essentially all the governments in the African states, in the African countries are corrupt. And this is why you guys are not building solid infrastructures. See, but this is what I'm getting at. Now we're getting divisive, right? Because if you watch that video, which is only 30 minutes, if you watch that video, am I truly being divisive? If I'm truly looking down on people, or am I stating fact? Or am I just speaking out the side of my neck? Am I trying to start a war between African immigrants and Black Americans? Absolutely not. See, anytime that people reveal things about people's culture, heritage, country, we start to get very divisive. We start to get very angry. We get into our emotion. We have to separate fact from fiction. Okay. So with that being said, we're going to move on because we're going to look at Sweden. And again, I agree with the brother 100% when he talks about the quality of living. So we talk about the quality of living. Sweden's overall ranking is number 9. And we look at things like open for business. The score is 83. They rank number 5. And as we scroll down here for open for business, not bureaucratic at 99.7, not corrupt. They're 100% not corrupt. Transparent government practices, 90%. Clear, but cheap manufacturing costs, that doesn't even register at 1%. We look at the quality of life, the score of 93 overall. Is it affordable? Absolutely not. See, you have to get a job there. You have to become, go over there on a work visa, student visa to even get into those countries because they don't have open immigration laws like America. And this is why America is now being reclaimed and now being relabeled as a country of immigrants. But that's not true, because we understand that Aboriginal people that look like you and I were actually there prior to slavery. And a lot of people would like to null and void. They would try to, oh no, they were Native Americans. They look like the South Mongolian people out of Asia. And that's absolutely false, right? And because the only thing we believe come from books, come from research, and come from what essentially white Europeans had written in their books to be the truth, right? But again, I digress because that's very debatable and we can talk about that all day. Let's get back on topic here, family, because I just want to bring relevance to this. Is it safe? 93% is safe. Well-developed public education system, 100%. Well-developed public health system, 100%. Okay? Let's move on to Norway. Number 7 ranking for open for business. No cheap manufacturing costs. Favorable tax income at 16%. That means what? Over 20% is being taxed. Excuse me, over 80% is being taxed. Not bureaucratic at 99, not corrupt at 99, transparent government policies at 90%. So clear and transparency, the governments are well ran. Good job market at 50, I'll round it up to 50%, is affordable, not even 2% affordable for most people. Economically stable at 92, family friendly at 92. Is it safe at 97? Well-developed public education systems over 90 and public health systems over 90. Get into Germany. We'll get into Germany. Open for business. Again, not registering no more than 0.1%. Favorable tax environment, highly taxed, not bureaucratic at 80%, not corrupt at 100%, and transparent government practices. And I'm not going to toy with these numbers. I'm not going to even try to do a deep dive in who's corrupt, who's not corrupt. In my opinion, they're all corrupt, okay? Doesn't matter if you're in Europe, America, or Africa. They're all corrupt in some form or fashion. But there is a difference of the governments who essentially care somewhat about the people that they call their citizens, right? Or their constituents, because they need those to stay in power. When it comes to a good job market, 93% is a great job market. Affordable, less than 2%. Economically stable at 100%. Is it safe? Around 70%. Well-developed public education system at 97. Well-developed public health system at 98%. Now, right before we get to America, as I stated, how a lot of these countries in Europe are very, very safe. Who are they safe for? That's the question. Who are they safe for? They're mostly safe for the majority of people who look like the government and their representation, meaning they're mostly safe for white people, because whether you're African American, don't really like using that term, foundational Black American, American expat with a dark hue, melanated tone, an African or Caribbean immigrant over there for work, trying to be a citizen over there on a student visa, it's not safe for you or not. Because if white supremacy controls and dominates the world globally, they do it majority in the Western world. So that's the things we have to look at. And oppression, see, it's like you go from being slightly oppressed to majorly oppressed. And then we start to toy with if Ukraine and Poland, Romania, and all these other bordering countries of Ukraine are being racist. What do you think they are? Then we talk about the public education system as well as the public health system. Why do you think these states, why do you believe these countries in Europe are highly taxed? Because their education and because of their healthcare systems are socialist systems. More socialist than some of the American systems. This is why these places are quote unquote utopia for those citizens. See, when we talk about the quality of life, let's not talk about who runs the country. Let's not talk about the majority of the citizens. Let's talk about the African immigrants over there. What are their quality of life? And see, this is how things become very divisive when you kind of do a broad spectrum and very vague statement. Now we're going to get to America. Good old red, white, and blue. Open for business, 45th ranking. Cheap manufacturing costs? Absolutely not. Favorable tax environment at 12%. Not bureaucratic? Yes, we are at 65. Not corrupt at 92. Transparent government policy only at 23. Yeah, there's no transparent government policies. There's a lot of trick words and word salad and a lot of bureaucracy within our domestic policies, bills, legislation, etc. Ranking, quality of life, number 20. A good job market at 80%. Affordable at 7.9%. That's slightly above those European nations. Economically stable at 73%. Safe, not safe at all, those European nations. Well-developed public education system at 70%. Well-developed public health system at 31.9%. So we're doing horribly bad compared to our European counterparts. We're doing horribly bad compared to our European counterparts. They're blowing us out the water. But here's the question. Not to be divisive, but to separate fact from fiction. Why do majority of African and Caribbean immigrants come to America versus Europe? Now, when we talk about proximity, I understand why a lot of Caribbean immigrants come to America. That's plain and simple. It's proximity. You guys are closer to us than Africa. I understand. But why do African immigrants in large droves come to America versus European nations? It's because our laws, our legislation open the doors and opportunities from immigrants around the world, because the one thing that America banks on is becoming the world's most powerful nation. And what do? We headhunt for the brightest of any nation, even though we oppress some of you melanated people from Africa. We still want the biggest and brightest stars of everyone. See, when you go to some of these European nations, they have a small population of African immigrants. They have a small population of American Black immigrants. Why is that? First and foremost, it's very expensive to live in Europe. And when we talk about the quality of life, we're not talking about the home you have. We're not talking about the car you have. We're not talking about the actual quality of living within a neighborhood or district. We're talking about the quality of life mostly with education and healthcare. That's because that part of their government is a socially ran government when it comes to healthcare and education. And that is why it is better. In America, this is almost 100%, as I said, almost. I'll give it around 95% capitalist society where you have to pay for quality education. Our private schools are absolutely great. Some of our charter schools are great. Any school that you essentially pay for in America are better than any public school system. But see, what you don't understand in social society, that great school system that Europe has, all the countries in Europe have, the great healthcare that they have, those citizens of those European states are paying for it with their tax dollars. They're being taxed over 40% on an income of $40,000 to $50,000 when you convert it from different European countries. It's very expensive to live in Europe. And this is why people come to the less of the West. They come to America. See, not too many Americans go to Europe to live a better life. They don't do that. They stay right here in these United States of white supremacy. But again, OG, he would like to highlight how these European countries are better than my country, is better than your country. And that's perfectly fine. But I guarantee I won't be leaving to go live in Europe. Because in America, you have to understand the culture of violence. You have to understand the culture of crime. You have to understand the culture of corrupt governments. See, I'm not going to go to neighborhoods in certain parts of the city where crime is high. See, that's why you always have to familiarize yourself before you go to any place in any country. You have to be very familiar where you're going. I digress there. Let me move on because I want to address some more of his comments as I stated. He says, talking down on Somalians and Ethiopians is fair. Okay, so now he is being divisive against Ethiopians and Somalians. Why are you talking down on some of your brethren within the continent? See, I wasn't speaking down on Ethiopians or Somalians. What I was doing is giving you my personal attestment of some of the racial, heartbreaking comments that I hear certain and some Ethiopians and Somalians say. That doesn't mean that all Somalians are racist against Black Americans, or I won't say racist. I will say divisive, or Ethiopians, because I know they don't speak for the entire country of Ethiopia or Somalia. But you have, right? Because you said that is fair. You say, oh, talking down on them, that's fair, because us Nigerians, we talk down on them too. And OG didn't say that. I'm just adding that in. He also says here, however, same could be asked of you, Black Americans. Why do you guys have such low quality education? Capitalist society, my friend. See, what I realized, this family, is a long time ago that a lot of Africans from the different African, a lot of the different African nations, not all, again, we can't put this out of context. I'm not talking about every African, because I have a lot of African friends. I respect them. They respect me. We understand our cultural differences. We understand our backgrounds. But here's the difference between you and I. The difference is I do my research. I speak to the people from the continent, and then I give what I would like to believe somewhat of excellent commentary and response. See, what you're stating is you don't understand the history of America. You don't understand the history of Black Americans. See, what you don't understand, whether it be slavery, because I know you mentioned that in your comment as well, or present day, is that on average, some of the discriminatory and discriminating practices of America is that Black Americans will pay the same amount of taxes as white Americans and Asian Americans, but those monies are not put inside our school system. And this dates back from 1865 of our ancestors being released from slavery. See, that's the thing. You speak out of emotions. We try to speak out of facts. We try to speak out of research. That's the difference. That's the difference from my experience on the majority of African immigrants who essentially speak very divisive about Americans, that you do not know our history. You read a couple of headlines, but you don't do a deep search and a fine lines that, oh, well, Black Americans pay the same amount of taxes as white Americans. Why are there schools like that? Why they don't have updated books? This is what you call systematic racism. This is what you call systematic oppression. Did you know that it was illegal for us to read in slavery? Did you know during Jim Crow that it was illegal for us to read? Did you know that when they dispersed funds of the tax refunds, that they disproportionately gave more to white neighborhoods than they did Black neighborhoods? No, you don't know that because you haven't done your research. See, I understand what Europe has done to Africa. I totally understand. They have raped and robbed majority of your resources, and they're still doing it today, but most likely is the Chinese nowadays, right? They're the modern day economic enslavers of the African people in the many African states. And of course, you're going to say that the government is corrupt and they allow it. I'm not going to go and say a statement to be divisive and say, well, why aren't the people doing anything? I'm not going to say that. Let me continue. He said, in fact, low quality lives generally compared to the whites in the midst of such wonderful opportunities in the U.S. You see that? He doesn't even understand our history. He doesn't understand our background. He doesn't even understand what's currently happening day in, day out in modern day times. Because he asked a question. Generally compared to whites in the midst of such wonderful opportunities. See, what you have to understand, when people write comments, when people say statements, you have to understand the relevance of what they're talking about, because the relevance here is that he does not know what he's talking about. And unfortunately, a lot of African immigrants do not know what they are talking about. They're speaking against Black Americans in America, in Europe. I don't want to hear about slavery because we Africans lost the very best of us too. Your ancestors were our forefathers, uncles, sisters, brother, etc. You are absolutely right, sir. You are absolutely right. But you don't want to hear about slavery because slavery was such a long time ago, and it really doesn't affect Black Americans today. The Black Reconstruction, that happened so long ago, that doesn't really affect Black Americans today. Jim Crow happened so long ago, it really doesn't affect Black Americans today. The civil rights era, it happened such a long time ago, it really doesn't affect Black Americans today. Police brutality happens it happens every day. Discriminatory practice throughout America, that's happened. That still happens today. See, what you need to understand is that this is by design. When you look at melanated people around the world, it doesn't matter what country we are in, we are always on the bottom. But he would like to compare America as though he's speaking for all Nigerians and speaking against all Americans, like Black Americans has something to do with the state that we're currently in today. We have something to do for the current state that we're in today. And that we're just sitting around lazy, not trying to change our situation, right? That's what we're doing, right? We're not doing anything because we're living horribly bad here in America, sitting fat and happy, absolutely doing nothing, living in the slums, living in shanty towns, living in the ghettos, living in the favelas. That's what we're doing, right? But as you look at Black people, melanated people around the world, we are the dirt that the boot of white supremacy steps on each and every day. But you would like to prop up European countries. You would like to prop up white people. See, this refers me back to a video I did of some Africans having a colonized mind. It's kind of right there in Nigeria, sir, where you guys prompted up a statue of white Jesus. I wonder who your God is. I'm just asking a question. In the middle of Nigeria, you have the largest white Jesus statue in Africa. See, I like to be relevant, contextual, and I like to bring actual facts. See, when I look at the melanated people from around the world, when I went to Brazil, I see a large statue of white Jesus. I can show you pictures. Majority of the African descended people in Brazil live in favelas, homeless, the lowest part of their economy. Why is that? Is it by design or are they being lazy too? So anywhere that Black people are doing bad in the world, OG, you being a Nigerian, are we all just lazy or they're victims of their circumstance? Are they victims of their government? Or are they victims of the system of white supremacy, oppression, and tyranny? Is that it? Just asking questions. Let me continue. Because he don't want to hear about slavery. He said, your ancestors were our fathers, uncles, and sisters. He said, we lost the very best of us too. You're right. Here we are, Black Americans. Because if you knew anything about slavery, during those warring kingdoms in Africa, and some of those chiefs during the time, and some of those kings in the different many kingdoms in Africa, was giving us away to white enslavers. And majority of us were the warrior class. It wasn't just citizens of the different kingdoms and nations. We were majority of the warrior class. So you are correct. Thank you for acknowledging that. I appreciate that. Thank you, sir. It left Africa bare. After that, we suffered colonialism. The West brutally raped our continent, robbed it of all its finest resources, wiped out our culture, gave us new lingo, killed and pillaged. Absolutely correct. Have you ever wondered why people think you guys are lazy? No, I never thought about that. Think about it. Okay, thought about it. You see, we can all go down that lane and eventually not achieve much, but hate on each other. No. I want him to now give me another comment. Oh, why do people think we're lazy? Why do people think we're lazy? Because I think about it. I want you to list. I want you to respond of why you think we're lazy. See, I can put out comments like that. Oh, why do a lot of Black Americans think all of Africa is just a jungle and people are not civilized? Why? Can we talk about it? I thought about it. See, what we need to understand, family, is that Western media paints Black people horribly bad no matter where you go. See, in Africa, they paint Black Americans in America and Europe horribly bad. When you're in Europe and America, they paint Africans horribly bad. And when you're Brazil, you just get the residual leftovers. You get the waste of it all. This is why you think we are lazy. And this is why they popped up that some of you, oh, they're hardworking. The best of them are best. Come over here. See, they don't let no poor Africans over here, do they? No, a lot of you are scientists, researchers, doctors. A lot of you in computer software, computer database systems. They take the best and the brightest of you all. But see, when we over here in America, they paint you guys just as bad as they paint us over there. See, this is the war of the divide that the Western world and the system of white supremacy has us toiling back and forth. But as I stated before, you're talking down on Somalis and Ethiopians. That's fair, right? I digress. He goes on to say, have you ever wondered why people think you guys are lazy? Think about it. We can see you can go down that lane, but we're having achieved much. Making a video, puffing on a cigar, and talking down on Africans with some gaslighting and half truths is the easiest thing anyone can do. The day you guys want some honest conversation, we all can get together and have it. Everyone had their perspective. Don't always think of yours alone. I rarely do this. I don't think I've ever done this in my life before. But OG, you want to have a conversation? Send me an email. My email is listed right there on my Ross World page. And we can set up either be an interview or debate. But we can somewhat air our grievances and differences of the reasons why that Black people around the world are the current condition that we're currently in. You want to do that, OG? Please let me know. Because as you state, here I am puffing on a cigar. And I made sure, I don't really smoke a cigar this early, but I made sure I was puffing on a cigar. And by the way, OG, even though this doesn't really matter, after I finish all these cigars in my humidor over there, I'm going to pretty much try to give up cigars. It's not like I'm addicted or anything, but yes, I love a good cigar every now and again because of the flavor. But I will be puffing on one. There we go. All right. The day you guys want some honest conversation, we can all get together and have it. Everyone has their perspective. Don't always think of yours alone. I don't think of mine alone. But I would love to have your perspective right here on Financial Literacy 101, where I give you financial information, news, and political commentary. Finally, you must understand that Africans are their own greatest critic, especially Nigerians. Nigeria is a very large country, population-wise about 200 million, where those in Nigeria are in the diaspora. We criticize ourselves for our shortcomings. We have serious leadership problems. That's the government. Everyone knows that. But you pick just a few tweets from thousands of tweets just to justify your shallow narrative. I would love to know my shallow narrative. And if any of my Nigerian brothers, my Nigerian friends, please let me know. Please go and watch that 30-minute video because I would love to know my shallow, very narrow perspective of the video that I've given. And I'm going to play just a little bit more of that video. For those of you who probably have missed it, I encourage you to go and watch it for yourself. He says here, What the Ukrainians did was open racism. If they had said, wait a bit, but they didn't. He said, what the Ukrainians did was open racism. So why go there? Oh, because the majority of the people that went there are students, right? To learn from the racist Ukrainians, engineering, math, technology, science, doctor, law of what land? But anyway, let me continue to read. I'm gonna get through this. If they had said, wait a bit, but they didn't want the students to leave Ukraine at all. That's a devious, mean, and shameful. I don't know what he mean there, but anyway, we understand that natives should be given priority. Okay, so he agrees with me on that fact. But to refuse students that came to study in your country to exit is pure humane and should be condemned. Gloating about it says a lot about you, meaning me. Oh, okay. So I was gloating about you guys being left and have to walk several hours to the Romanian border, to go to Moldova, to go to Poland, who essentially initially stopped you guys from entering. And then pointing out the fact is, where is the African support? You remember the thumbnail? Where is the African support? Now, African nations are speaking out against the clear and cut discrimination that a lot of those bordering European countries of Ukraine has prevented a lot of the African immigrants from entering and essentially fleeing the war-torn cities and districts of the Ukraine. Now they are. You know why? Because people like myself have spoke out against it, OG. But even in that commentary, even in those videos, we're still going to make a comparison. We're still going to give our own bias and perspective. We call it intelligent thought. So maybe you should research properly about Black Americans. Because again, as you said, we're the warrior class. We're the best of the best because you lost them. Also, he states here, and should be condemned. Gloating about it says a lot about you. Our students will all be evacuated in a few days' time. And like I said before, you Black Americans do not need to care if it's not genuine. We can handle our own business. You guys can handle your own business. But you meddle in Black Americans' business when you guys come over here for the many policies and legislations that allow you to, that Black American forefathers and civil rights activists have paved the way for easy ingress to be part of our country, to live in our country, to study in our country. But again, the quality of living here is horribly bad. We're number 20, where we have 19 other countries from Europe and Asia ahead of us. But we have one of the largest African immigrant populations in the world. Let me play just a little bit more of this video, family, so you guys can get some more information about how this comment and response of this comment actually even started. The reason why I bring this up, family, is because as I'm following India students that are over there, essentially just like the just like the African students for medical school, engineering school, those STEM degrees that they're trying to receive over there in the Ukrainian region, where it be Poland, Ukraine, Romania, etc., but in Europe as a whole, what I'm seeing is thousands of African immigrants are stranded and also prevented from leaving the country. And the question I have is, why isn't there any African countries speaking out against this very, very publicly and fervently? And what are they not doing versus what are they are doing? So again, I haven't heard anything or saw any large news lines of Africans sending support in large numbers. But Indians are. They have got with their local and national airlines and they are extracting Indian students and Indian citizens on the whole. I haven't seen that from Africa. So then we come full circle. That part. If I really didn't care, first and foremost, I wouldn't even cover this story. Number two, I wouldn't give you a solution of what other neighboring countries are doing. See, anytime we speak, we're speaking in support, believe it or not. But people would like to only take what they believe to be negative. See, the thing about is pressure. The same way Black Americans put pressure on the American government, we speak out against it on social media, on nation. What's the word I'm looking for? I forgot, family. But worldwide media, we speak out against it very, very publicly because it puts pressure on the systems to do the right thing. We understand that Ukraine and Russia have special interests in Africa. We understand that one of their major export is wheat to Africa. And essentially, Africa doesn't want to lose that European support, even though the same European countries are some of the same countries that has stole, raped, coerced, and manipulated their resources and their people. I digress. But you get the point I'm making, right? But see, that's what we do. We come on and we give our own assessment and how we see it to connect the dots, so to speak, to put pressure on those countries to support their own people. But he didn't say it that way. Because again, the thumbnail is, where is the African support? It's not speaking out against African immigrants or African immigrant students. It's speaking about the governments in Africa and what they should be doing or what they could be doing to help their people. But you didn't see that this was all probably a bit of Pan-Africanism to make governments aware that we are aware. And what are you doing about that? Why are you letting your people suffer at the borders of these European countries? Because a lot of those African immigrants, I would like to believe, takes that information and go back to their countries and make their countries better, to make the healthcare system better, to make the educational system better, to make their infrastructures better, to inspire and push the barriers of innovation. That's what I would like to believe, but I'm just speaking down. I'm gloating. I'm gaslighting while smoking a cigar. Cool. What am I getting at? What is this discussion is really talking about? So I go to my comment section, and then we're going to come back to Ethiopia a little bit later, because I know there's a lot of divisive talk that Ethiopians and Somalis talk about Black Americans. I'm going to be just a little bit divisive, but that's okay, right? Some differences, a little bit of pushback. But I want to bring some context to the conversation. This is from a Nigerian, and this is not the only comment I have, but this is the only one that I'm willing to share. Let's just say that. But when I was in Ghana, I heard this consistently, this same sort of rhetoric and point of view from the Africans that live inside the country. Okay? I'm currently living in Nigeria, and I'll say this: it's normal for people to prioritize their own over foreigners. Okay? The same thing I said on one of my last broadcasts. In times of crisis, right, they prioritize their own citizens over foreigners. Keep that in mind. What pisses me off is the fact that I know for a fact that if the roles were reversed, we'll push white folks to the front of the line over our own people. Exactly. This is what he's saying. This is a Nigerian citizen in Nigeria. He said, you want to see real white privilege? Come to African countries. People you complain about how Africans are treated outside of Africa, ask yourself why so many people of our people are outside of Africa in the first place. Unpack that for a second, family. Unpack that. Good afternoon, Thurby Swag, one of my good brothers here. You guys go ahead and subscribe to this brother's channel. He's a certified therapist. Nice to see you, brother. But nonetheless, this is a Nigeria with a Nigerian speaking out that essentially in Africa, white people say have white privilege, and in only their white countries, they have white privilege as well, while they push the black people, the African immigrants, to the rear, and actually preventing some of them from actually leaving the country. So where is the African support? I see other countries gathering up resources, networking to extract their people and bring them back to their own countries, like India. And then the question, should Black Americans care about the African immigrants that are trapped in the Ukraine? That is the question that I have. Should Black Americans care about the African immigrants, aka students, that are trapped and prevented from leaving the war-torn Ukraine? Because as I stated before, I'm looking at Ukraine's GDP at $155 billion, Nigeria's GDP over 430-something billion dollars, and South Africa's GDP over $300 billion. So it's not the point if they have the money or not. Are they willing to use their resources to give their citizens and students safe passage back to the continent? That's the question. Now move on here. So I thought about something else. I know that India has its own airlines, right? India has its own airlines. So it had me to really start thinking. I'm like, well, do the continent of Africa, do they have their own airlines? I mean, do they own and operate their own airlines? But of course they do. Let's just go down the line. Algeria, Cameroon Airlines, Djibouti Airlines, Egypt Air, Ethiopian Airlines, Ghana Airways, Kenya Aviation, Madagascar Air or Air Madagascar, Air Malawi, Royal Air Morocco. You have one here in Mozambique, Air Nambia, Nigeria, Senegal, Seychelles, South Africa, Sudan, Tanzania, Tunisia, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. So there's plenty of airlines in Africa. There's plenty of airlines in Africa. Because India is actually landing in the Ukraine as well as Poland and some neighboring countries that their citizens have essentially fled to in order to leave the country. But I haven't heard this. So my thinking is the reason why African countries are not speaking out against the Ukraine or Russia is because of support that Ukraine and Russia actually gives to the African countries in a way of wheat, most likely. So with that being said, family, I'm going to show you two more sources here. One, this story just came out a couple of days ago, and it's because, well, not just Black Americans, but people from around the world have spoken out against this atrocities. But as of March 2nd, this is some of the headlines that you have seen. UN urges countries to open borders to Africans fleeing Ukraine. And those countries are white ran. They're white governments. They're white government officials. They are pleading, the UN is pleading to allow some of these Africans to flee inside their country. But you don't hear that, okay? You don't hear that when you look at news stories like this. Tunisian students evacuated from Ukraine arrive home. And this is from the africannews.com. But what's also important is this: Ukrainians that are in Africa, in Zanzibar. Stranded Ukrainian tourists in Zanzibar secured. What do they mean by secured? So nearly 1,000 Ukrainian tourists have been stranded in Zanzibar. Oh, I don't know why they say stranded. I mean, essentially, I understand that their country is going through war, but they're stranded at a resort because a lot of European citizens, no matter what country they're from, they most likely go to some of the beautiful places in Africa to vacation in. That's where they go. They go to the Caribbean, they go to Africa to vacation in, because where melanated people are the most beautiful places in the world. Are the most beautiful places in the world. Now, It states here, the first thing we did was to ensure that they stayed where they are. Even if it was time for them to leave, we allowed them to stay in the hotels and be served as human beings, she added, as shown that they will receive all the services, comfort, and remain for free. Comfort and remain for free. And we understand that the Ukrainian dollar is worth more than the Zanzibar. I don't know the actual currency or the dollars actually named, but we understand that one of their dollars is worth way more than any of your dollars. Okay, and again, I know this is Zanzibar, I know this is Ukraine, but this stating throughout all the African countries, one Ukrainian dollar is worth majority of all the African dollars. It's worth more when you convert that money, when you convert the currencies. But they're saying for free, and they're going to get all the services. Now, I'm not going to get into the differences and the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, but I do want to point out one more thing here that I read. It states here, what's happening in Ukraine makes them extremely unhappy. A Russian, let me highlight that, family. I need to highlight that for you guys to see that. A Russian who runs a Zanzibar resort, one of the hotels where the Ukrainians are trapped. But see, another tactic that a lot of the African governments could have done or could be doing is to say, if you don't give our African brothers and sisters, our students, our citizens safe passage into the neighboring countries in Europe, then we're not only going to shut down the European ran resorts, which is probably like 99% of them, but we're going to put them on a one-way ticket to the Ukraine or to Poland or to Romania or to Moldova. That's what we're going to do. We're going to get them out of our country. If you can't give our students, our citizens, our people safe passage, then we're going to get you up out of here. And I know that's not going to look good as they're doing political talks in the UN and trying to figure out a way. See, Tunisians, they didn't have to figure out a way. The Indians, they didn't have to figure out a way. Even though I heard some discriminatory things were happening against the Indians got together resources and boom, they start sending planes. Let's get our people out of there. So once again, OG, hopefully you take this with love and kind. But if you don't, I don't care. Because at the end of the day, the things that Black Americans and support, like one of our rap stars who's out there on social media, who's trying to support the African immigrants trying to leave those countries, Young Thug, is not only saying those things, but he's putting his money where his mouth is. So with that being said, if you can take it in a positive light, this is about support of those African immigrants and putting pressure on the African governments who has not spoken ill will as of late. You know, when that video first came out, there was really no headline stating that African governments and countries were speaking out against it, against the discriminatory and racism there. But now they are. You guys have a great and wonderful day. I'm out.